So today I'd like to share a really fun outing that I had with a friend of mine, Ed, where we went a combination of canoeing and camping and duck hunting and all at the same time. One time he says, "Well, you know where the Winchester Wasteway comes off from Dotson Road and goes into the Potholes Reservoir?" And I said, "Yeah, I know that area pretty well." And he says, "Well, years ago, someone took me in a canoe and we went, took that route. We put in at Dotson and went all the way to the lake, and it was really a fun trip. We had to portage one place where there's a little waterfalls, but other than that, it was really cool. You want to do that sometime and maybe do some duck hunting along the same way?" I said, "Well, yeah, that sounds like a great outing." So we planned, how we're going to do this, and we decided, well, we're going to save some money. We're going to just take one car, load the car and the canoe and everything with all our gear, drive it to the takeout point, Dotson, and then drive the car, our launch point rather, and then drive the car all the way down to where we're going to take out, park it there, and then somebody will hitchhike back. Ed said, "Yeah, no problem. I should be able to get a ride okay." And meet up, and then we would take off and have the car waiting for us at the end of the journey. So everything starts out pretty well. We drop the canoe off and all our gear and everything. Ed takes the car and drives down to where he's going to park it. So I'm kind of sitting there and I'm loading up the canoe with all our gear, our camping stuff and hunting stuff and everything else, and make sure that it's stable and that everything will fit. I've got a nice 18-foot aluminum, so we had room to fit everything in the canoe. But Ed's not showing up for a while, so pretty soon a couple of guys kind of show up that had been out duck hunting, and I said, "Hey, if I gave you $20, would you go over to a certain spot that I described to him where our car was going to be parked, and there's a guy there that might be looking for a ride. Would you pick him up and bring him back here, and I'll give you $20. And the guy said, "Yeah, we could use the money." So they, take off, and a little while later they show up with Ed, and he said, "Boy, am I glad you sent these guys over." He said, "There was nobody. There's no cars at all, at this time of day over there." So anyway, we got started. So we got in the canoe and we started going, and at our start point, it's basically real flat water, no current whatsoever, beaver pond area pretty much, and like going through a shallow pond or something. And in fact, in order to be able to tell the direction of the flow, we had to look down into the water. It was fairly shallow, and we could see which way the grass was bent. And that's the direction that the water's flowing, so we'll follow that. So we go along for a while, and we have our shotguns, and our goal is to we're going to get some ducks, and we're going to camp out one night. Then the second evening, we're just going to pull in, load the canoe up on the car, and head home. So we take off, and the guy in the front, we decided, okay, that we're going to let the guy in the front of the canoe be the only one that's shooting, just for safety reasons. And the guy in the back is kind of, make sure that the canoe doesn't run aground and tip over, and so we take off, and this is probably about the middle of November, I think, that we took. It was starting to get cold out, and the northern mallards had come down, and boy, they started jumping out of the water, taking flight. Just every turn that we took of the channel or the wasteway, we'd flush some more ducks. But they just constantly were either out of range, or if you shot them, you weren't going to be able to recover them, etc. So, we weren't doing a lot of shooting, we were doing a lot of watching. We must have flushed a couple of hundred ducks, without taking a shot. So we finally get to a place that we say, okay, let's pull the canoe up on shore, and set up camp. And what we're going to do is we're going to walk around the area and look for little ponds where the ducks are sitting, next to the wasteway. That as the wasteway kind of overflows during the spring, it forms these little ponds. So we pitch tent and start walking around, and sure enough, we get to a first pond, and a couple of ducks jump up, and we get a couple. so then we walk around, and the brush is kind of thick. There's not heavy trees here. It's more willows and where you can see for a distance, but on the other hand, it's easy to lose your direction there, and especially the way the river's winding around, and we had to really pay attention to looking at the sun and the making sure we had a good built-in compass on how to get back to where our campsite was. And so we're walking fairly close together, and all of a sudden a great big, just huge buck, I mean it must have weighed 300 pounds, jumps up right between the two of us. Either one of us could have hit it with a rock. And we just, I mean, it was a massive animal, and nice rack and everything. And so he said, Ed said, this is a special permit area. They have a lot of these big deer in this area that, these trophy deer that you have to get a special permit to hunt there. So we keep hunting around, go back to camp, and fix a meal. We brought some of these dried food meals and stuff, and really enjoying ourselves. So we get up early in the morning. We said, well, let's hunt for a little bit in the morning and see how we do, and then we'll take off and head back to where the car is. So we hunt around in the morning, get another duck or two, and go back. It's probably noon by the time we got back to the camp, and by the time we break camp, pack everything back up again, it's getting a little bit later than we expected in the day, and so we start paddling along, and the water changes now. We get out of, we're seeing beaver all over the place. We must have seen, I don't know, 30, 40, just, sunning themselves on the bank, swimming around. So, we're paddling along, and all of a sudden the water is starting to, instead of being ponds, it starts becoming more of a river or a channel, and there's a little bit of current to it. But now it's starting to get towards dusk, and so we're driving along, and we're just saying, well, okay, I don't know if we should be able to spot the car, in light conditions, and be able to figure it out, but it's getting dark, and I don't know if we hit that waterfalls, and have to portage around it. I'm not so sure, so I finally talk Ed into, okay, let's pitch tent again, call the girls, let them know that we're going to be late, and, have another night out on the water. So we set up camp again, and it's kind of cold out. We wake up, there's ice on the tent in the morning, but we slept good, and, had some hot chocolate in the morning, and, just really enjoying ourselves. So we get on the water again, and start going along, and now the water is really flowing pretty good, and it's a fairly narrow channel. So I'm sitting in the rear because I'm fairly experienced as I've had that canoe for 60 years, and I know how to manipulate it fairly well, and it's a good thing I did, because if the front of that canoe had hit the edge of the bank, and the current would just tip the canoe over, and all our gear and everything would go, scattering around. So I really had to pay attention to my canoeing and navigating that boat. Now I was really glad that we were doing it in broad daylight instead of dusk or night conditions. And we had to, probably another hour and a half or so, and all of a sudden we look up, and we're flushing a few ducks along the way, and we didn't have time to shoot anymore, so we just would kind of point our finger and say, "Bang, you're dead," and we're just having, just really enjoying the trip, and all of a sudden we look up, and my God, there's the car, and we almost missed it in broad daylight. There's no chance that we'd have seen it in dusk or night conditions. So we pull in there and look at the car, and there's a note on there that said Fish and Wildlife had visited our spot and wondered if we were okay. and I called my wife, and she said, yeah, they called us here at home and said, hey, that car's been parked here for 2 days. Is he okay? So it was good that we called our wives and let them know what was going on. And it was a good lesson to us to, either leave a note on the car with our cell phone numbers, just make sure that people knew when we were expected back and that sort of thing. So it was a great trip. We didn't have that many ducks that we came back with, but the camping experience was really fun. You have to be a good canoe person. And we never did hit that waterfall. Apparently it was a little bit closer to, it was beyond where our takeout point was. But it was a good experience on, doing something for the first time, and we were glad that we had the skill set that we did, that we didn't tip the canoe over, and we'll probably take 2 cars next time to make sure that we get a ride back. So anyway, that's a learning experience, and it's a trip that you might want to take sometime. We hope that you enjoyed this week's telling of Campfire Tales. Please remember to hit subscribe to make sure that you get the announcements for next week's upcoming activities, as well as the new topics for the Campfire Tales. Please also share the fun that we have here and let your friends know about our website. Check out rogersoutdoorchannel.org for more information and to stay connected. If you like the outdoors, great to enjoy this site.